Hello and welcome to the Canadian Culture Corner's Fireside History. Last time I read to you a bit of the proclamation of Telepinu describing Labarna, or Tabarna as he's also called, his reign. Now Labarna went on to have quite the career, conquering the southeast of Anatolia and a bit of the north, so that in time to his successors, he became a bit of the example to follow for future, if you wanted to be a successful king in the future. Now, that said, there was a rebellion that happened in the time of one of Labarna's successors time, and that was that a rebellion took place that split the kingdom, with a rival regime taking ownership of Sanahuita and, fighting against full force against the forces of Kusara. Now, this is kind of the backdrop to Labarna's grandson's succession to the throne. That of Hattusili the First. Now, Hattusili identified himself as the Great King Tabarna, or Hattusili the Great King, King of the land of Hatti, man of Kushara. Now, he claims to have ruled, according to his annals, as king, son of the brother of Tawanana. Tawanana is the post of High Queen, or Great Queen, or Queen of the Hittites. And Hattusili, evidently, if we are to judge by his taking the title Man of Kushara, began his reign in Kushara, inheriting from his predecessor a kingdom which had been apparently split in half. Now, before he saw to rectifying the situation, Hattusili took the unprecedented step of doing two things. Possibly adopting a new name, that is to say, Hattusili, and, most notably of all, he moved the capital from Kushara to Hattusa, thus altering the fate of his kingdom in its entirety for the rest of its future. And this act is really quite remarkable because you have to bear in mind that Hattusa had been cursed by Hattusili's own grandfather, and he had to be aware of this. But he still built a capital there, a royal one, but we have no indication as to why, really, outside the fact that at least no indication from Hattusili himself. But we do know for a fact that Hattusili did this because Hattusa lies pretty much at the center of Anatolia. And he probably had in mind to expand in almost every direction. And it's a more defensible location to a certain extent. Now, what I mean is, now it's more susceptible to invasion. But in terms of defensibility, just the overall walls and area, because, it's right next to a mountain, so it's kind of protected geographically on one side. What is more is that by taking such a capital, such a location as the center of his kingdom, it means that future successors would have to either thrive as warriors or perish, because they had to be competent. They had to defend constantly from future invasions. They had to always be on guard. Now, this means that this will guarantee his successors will always keep an eye out in case of invasion. and should they ever fail, the capital will perish, as it later does. Now, this might be a bit of a weird decision to make, but the fact is, he probably wanted to guarantee that his successors would be as smart as him on some level, or like it's a bit of 4K chess against history itself and against the future. But at the same time, it's a incredibly dumb decision. So you could read it as either really stupid or really smart. History would be the judge, and history judges both ways on this one. So it both went well and went wrong. Now, Hattusa was apparently closer to Sanohita, and the campaign was launched, which in the words of the annals, or this is almost Hattusili's own words, he marched against Sanohita. He did not destroy it, but its lands he did destroy. I left my troops in 2 places as a garrison. Now, when he says he says in the ancient text probably more, my son left my troops, which the son here is S-U-N, not S-O-N. There, because the Hittite kings always identified themselves with the sun. They're both a storm god's heirs as well as the sun's heirs. At least I suspect he probably said it that way. I have not read the original text quite yet. I gave whatever sheepfolds were there to my garrison troops. He thus plundered the city, but he left it, or at least the lands belonging to the city, but left it generally intact. Now, this is probably because he couldn't quite overtake the city. And thus, the campaign was kind of a mixed success, despite his posturing. Now, his posturing with Zalpa, which figures in the Anita inscription, far north of the mouth of the Marasantia River, is much more telling, and much more successful, where Hattusili says, Thereupon I marched against Zalpa and destroyed it. I took possession of its gods I gave 3 wagons to the sun goddess of Arena. I gave 1 silver bull and 1 silver fist, Raitan, to the temple of the storm god. The gods that were remaining I gave to the temple of Mesula. And in this campaign, Hattusili would capture, loot, and destroy the city in typical Hittite fashion. But this proved no more than a temporary setback for Zalpa, which later rebuilt itself and continued to resist the Hittites until, well, it even later reappears in Hattusili's reign, and in a rebellion against the rule of one of his sons. Therefore, Zalpa and Sanohita were not wholly defeated, and it'd be quite some time before Anatolia itself was secured for the Hittites. But that's all we have for you today. So if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time when I continue to discuss Hattusili's campaigns, this time into Syria.